Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I am RJ Horner, and I'm host and facilitator for Live and Love Life. And again, I'm proud to present you people who are able to help you live a better life, who are able to find you um, understanding, compromise, caring, and development within yourself to help you want to become a better person. And today, my guest has a technique that helps you center, helps you find grounding. And you can do this at a moment's notice so that if you find yourself in that struggle, you find yourself in a moment that you just can't control, you can use these techniques and find a little bit of clarity, a little bit of focus, and be able to move forward with a little bit more certainty than you were probably a moment before. So I want to thank Matthew Gardner for coming on today and bringing us his Phoenix Rising Masterclass. Matthew, tell me a little bit about yourself first before we get into how this is going to work.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole idea of Phoenix Rising and my organization is called Phoenix Rising United, and the idea that life is a unity, and the whole idea of death being the opposite of life is often the way we're conditioned, but they're not opposites. In fact, opposites aren't really opposites in the way that we're taught, but particularly in the context of death, it's a part of life. And every day we're going through consistent miniature deaths and rebirths in our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, our communication styles, things that work and don't work. So the idea of rising from the ashes is having a thorough understanding that the old will burn away. That's a part of the process. We want it to, so that we can have a blank canvas to create something new. And there's nothing wrong with burning the boats so that we can move forward in our lives. And this whole movement, if you will, was produced as a result of my late fiance, Gail. She passed away from terminal cancer in April of this year, and I got to experience, physical death in a very profound way, and obviously challenging in the sense of emotions and grieving and sadness in this process that we go through as human beings, but also a beautiful experience to realize that death isn't the final thing. Physical death is just a transition into the next realm of existence, and that's really what Phoenix Rising is all about. To realize that as though we may die in some way, shape, or form, part of ourselves, we're reborn into a brand new understanding of who we are, and having a greater capacity to express that.
So, are you saying when we use this technique, we're kind of rebirthing ourselves at that moment? Is that what you're kind of referring
Yeah,
to,
and like
or am I mistaken?
it's not even necessarily like the technique. Like, we'll get into gamma breathing, which is one of the main processes that I use to help people have that sense of rebirth,
Uh,
because it's through higher consciousness that we see the world in a different way. So, like Albert Einstein said, you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. So what does that mean? It means, well, you got to get out of your head and into your heart and into a higher level of awareness. So that's essentially what gamma breathing will allow you to do quite quickly. Now, I like to kind of use this disclaimer is, I'm not saying that gamma breathing is a holy grail or anything like that. It's a process that's worked for me quite well. It's worked for many other
mm.
people, but really it's your own allowing of yourself to get into alignment and to access the higher part of yourself. That's what the gamma breathing can allow you to do. So it's your willingness to explore at a deeper level in terms of who you are that allows the process to work. So, there's a challenge with a lot of people. They give their power away to a process or a technique, and they say, okay, as long as I'm taking my supplements, or as long as I'm doing this thing, I'm good. But if they don't do it, then they're not as good. And there's an evolution of consciousness to bring awareness to say, hey, it's not about the technique, or what one of my mentors calls a permission slip. A permission slip is simply something that allows you to be more of who you truly are, but it's the emphasis on you just having that desire to express more of who you are, and then you'll find whatever permission slip is most appropriate. So in this case, gamma breathing is one that works really well in a group setting, through my teaching, etc. Something that I learned from another mentor in the past. So yeah, I'll be definitely would love to share more about that as we go through the class today.
Okay, so again, you know what? I love that it's about opening people up to better possibility or better options. So, tell us how the class is going to work. What are we going to do today to help get some better clarity or better focus, as you mentioned?
Well, I think the key thing is like I like to address what's happening in the present moment first and
Okay.
foremost. So we'll use that as the basis for the teaching, and so I don't come in here with any agenda or curriculum. Not that there's anything wrong with having a system and organization in that fashion, but I like to keep it organized to what's real in the moment.
Hmm.
So we'll discuss that, and then we'll morph into the idea of like how does gamma breathing actually assist someone to elevate into a new level of awareness, and then we'll actually do it together collectively, you and I,
Okay.
and people can obviously participate either through the live or on the recording, and this will give them a taste of what my life's work has really become all about.
Okay. Absolutely. So again, we talked about being in the moment. I was hoping people would join us, and whether they do or not, it's still out there. But I'll go through this with you. We'll do this together. And you mentioned how, okay, we're starting this late, right? We're struggling. We're trying to get this going on time.
Yeah.
There was an issue that came up for me. So how would I deal with something like that in the moment so that I'm not
Yeah.
panicking and stressed and
Exactly. So that's, and super relevant, right? Because these are our day-to-day challenges, right? Technical issues, timing issues. And, we get this idea in our mind about like insistence or assumption that things need to be a certain way. And I was making kind of not a joke because I'm serious, but the idea that like Indians, like natives, Aboriginals, they operate on their own timing schedule. And, Indian time is like whenever they arrive, that's when, it's time to begin. And that's the way I function. And obviously, um, you know, there's different contexts for that depending on who you're operating with. So it's important to know, like, hey, if you're going to have a meeting with, the president of the United States or the prime minister of Canada or whatever, there's probably a thing where it's going to be more timely in terms of clock time. But, when you're operating at a different frequency, I'll call it a higher frequency of awareness, the clock time isn't as relevant from my perspective. And reason being is because it's more about the energetic timing. And this is really significant for a lot of people, and we'll dive into showing how the gamma breathing really gets you into this space. But everything has perfect timing. And if you're stressing out to get something done sooner than it's ready to get done, it's like putting a cake in the oven and it's going to take 20, 30, 40 minutes, but you're stressed out because you want it to be done sooner. Well, you know, how do we know that starting, at 10 after 4 was not the perfect timing? In fact, we know that it was the perfect timing because that's when it happened. And coming down to the present moment is that it always has everything we need in the moment. And sometimes we fret about the future, going through scenarios like, if this happened, how would I respond? Or what would happen? There's nothing wrong with that, right? You can role play things. It's like actors preparing for a movie. Like you can do that, but also fundamentally knowing that no matter what happens in the moment, you're always going to have everything you need. And this is a key challenge for people. They don't believe
right.
they're supported, right? And it's so counterintuitive to think that way, but we're conditioned that way. So there's a distinction between our conditioning and what's still counterintuitive. So if we're conditioned to believe something that's counterintuitive, then it seems intuitive, even though it's actually counterintuitive.
And the schedule is one of those things, you know what I mean? Because we give ourselves, not necessarily whether we give ourselves a commitment or we're obligated, right? We have a job to show up to at a specific time or things like that. Or, as I said, my broadcast, I'm telling people we were starting at 4 o'clock, right? And, 4 o'clock, and still there's these issues coming up, and it's hard to reconcile the two.
Yeah, so let's dive into the process of gamma breathing to give a new perspective on that for yourself as well as anyone who chooses to participate.
Okay.
And just for a little background for everyone, gamma breathing, it's a process that I learned from a gentleman named Corey Herder. And Corey, about 25 years ago, he was in a massive car accident, and his as a result, he had severe brain damage, and his brain began producing very high levels of dimethyltryptamine, which is called DMT for short, and also known as the spirit molecule. And so it's really one of the chemicals, one of the main components that links us to that spiritual realm. And because of that, and he was producing such high levels, he had over 300 out of body experiences over a series of several years. And part of that, he learned this gamma breathing process. And he realized that through gamma breathing, you can actually connect to that higher creative potential in yourself, and you can get that access to the spiritual realm. And it's different for everyone. So some people are so tuned into spirituality and they see like angels and things. Some people, it's just intuition and creativity, and that's how they connect spiritually. So there's no right or wrong way to experience it. But the idea is that it is tapping us into that higher brainwave state, the gamma frequency, essentially, gamma brainwave state. And so the process we'll go through here, it takes just under a minute to complete one cycle of breathing. Each breath is about 3 seconds in length, and there's a brief hold at the top and bottom of every breath for about a second. And you do it with your eyes closed. And really all you have to do is breathe along. So in this context, what we're going to look at is the idea of time and the pressure we put on ourselves for having the right timing of things, or
So,
just
so
showing up in the right
we
way.
think about this. We're conceptualizing this as we're about to bring out this
Just
technique.
right now, once we have the image there, we don't need to focus on it
Okay.
anymore. People can just follow along. But just for the moment right now, we'll just think about, that idea of the stress we put on ourselves for being on time, for our employer, for our spouse, or for our, quote, so-called commitments. And just whatever feelings come up for people, right? People might have a low level of intensity. They might feel panicked by that. Whatever it is perfect. And then as we go into this breathing, what you'll notice is by the end of the cycle, those emotions will have shifted and your perceptions of time will have shifted. So are you ready, RJ?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, great. So just go ahead and close your eyes and just begin by breathing all the way out of your mouth and emptying your lungs. And breathe mouth in 3 seconds. And mouth out 3 seconds. And nose in. And mouth out. And nose in. Nose out. And mouth in. And nose out. And mouth in. And mouth out. Just hold your breath there for 1 moment. And then relax and breathe normal. And it takes a few seconds for that energy to stabilize. So just take 5 or 10 seconds and notice the different changes in your brain and body as you go through the process. And you're just looking for any subtle shifts in your consciousness. It doesn't have to be some major profound thing, but a sense of levity, feeling lighter, feeling less stressed about time in this context may be a result. And what do you notice after that, RJ?
Yeah, honestly, I could say, thinking about, the stress at the time that, I put on myself anyways, I feel a kind of pressure in the chest and in the back, back of the shoulders.
Yeah.
I could feel that, you know what I mean? And then as we're doing the breathing, with each breath, you could kind of feel it just go lighter and lighter until by the time we were done, um, okay, it wasn't gone, you know what I mean? But I could feel just easier about it. Just, all
Yeah.
that pressure kind of relieved a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And we're just working with our own energy here. And we don't need a silver bullet, right? I think that's one of the challenges that, people look for in coaching and that sort of thing is like, I want an instant result. And I'm more a believer in it's a process. It's like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. We only need, one layer at a time. We only need one level at a time. And as long as we know we're on the right track, then things are going to work out. It's when we're panicked and feeling like we're lost or not in the right place, which is impossible, but we can allow ourselves to feel that way. Then that's when we tend to have that stuck energy or that stress in our body. So stress is a good thing from the standpoint that we can use it as fuel to grow. Of course, if we allow stress to burden ourselves, then it just ends up weighing us down, and then it's not serving a purpose. So what we'll do now is with this idea of stress and time, we'll do another breathing sequence here, and we'll really allow it to transmute into gold, kind of like transforming lead into gold. That's really what a negative situation or perception is. It's like a piece of lead. It's not helpful. It's a raw resource, and if it's used effectively, it can be transformed. But in and of itself, if not perceived correctly, it can be seen as a burden, something that's not helpful. So we're actually going to change our perception to see it as a helpful thing and allow time to be our friend. and allow timing to be a priority rather than being on time. And we'll do that with this next breath. And so you can go ahead and close your eyes. And if you're following along on the recording or the live call, just breathe along and begin by breathing all the way in through your mouth, filling your lungs. And mouth out 3 seconds. And mouth in 3 seconds. And mouth out. Nose in. Nose out. Nose in. Nose out. Mouth in. Mouth out. Mouth in. Hold your breath for a moment. Just breathe out. Breathe normal. And allow yourself to relax. Just allow that energy to stabilize again. You might notice it feels like it's settling more, like it's stabilizing into your system. The idea of feeling more solid in who you are is the fundamental key, because the idea is like when we're giving our way of power to time, and people talk about like time as a commodity, and it's the one thing we can never get back, and they have all these scarcity definitions of time, and the fact is, like from my perspective, none of that's true. Like everything is here and now, and the past doesn't exist. So it's not like we can't get the past back. We don't need to get it back. We don't need the past. All we need is what's in the present. We have everything that we need in the present. And mind you, we can create the perception of constraint or feeling like, man, that was a waste of time or whatever. But those aren't helpful perceptions, first and foremost, although they can be helpful if we use it as a way to just I don't want to use the word analyze in the sense that we get stuck with something, but we can look at our belief systems. So if we're feeling like, man, that was a waste of time, or I wasn't on time, I'm a terrible person for it, or whatever people say to themselves about it, then just look at it like, hey, obviously I have a belief system in myself about this, rather than saying that's a fact. It's not fact. There's very few things that are facts. Right? Most of it's perceptions, most of it's opinions, most of it's belief systems. So we just say, well, what is the actual fact? Well, the fact that I'm here and now and I have everything that I need, I mean, that's a fact, because if that wasn't true, you wouldn't exist, right? We wouldn't be here. So the fact that I'm able to communicate right now and be in this moment means I have everything I need. Every molecule, every atom of my body, every chemical required in order to make this possible is here now. It may not be the way that I would prefer it to be, right? But again, preference, that's just a perception. It's got nothing to do with reality. It's like, great, I'd rather have like $1 million and be on a, warm island with, beautiful water and sand and, gorgeous women everywhere. Okay. That's great that I would prefer that, but it's obviously not a necessity for me in this moment because I'm not there. Now, if I was there doing that, then it would be a necessity. And for some people, this is where the confusion I think comes in for people, RJ, is they see that on TV, they see that in Hollywood, they see people with money, and then they feel, well, I want that, and so I should have what they have. And obviously the people living that, they're getting what they need from that experience, which they're probably not that happy in most cases, as we found out with a lot of celebrities and such. So we misperceive even when we see that sort of thing. We assume that people are in a healthy state of mind and living well and all that sort of thing, but Earth is a master class, and that's why I like to call it the Phoenix Rising Master Class, right? So this is a classroom. So, those people having that experience, that's what they need for their growth and evolution. And we have no idea whether they're experiencing it positively or negatively. I mean, you can kind of tune into it and get an idea, but for you, that's the most important thing. So what are you making out of this master class? Are you using it as a lesson for your growth? Are you looking to get the best grade possible, and meaning, not overachieving, not being a perfectionist, but saying, hey, this is what I've been given. This is the hand I was dealt. I could choose to wallow in it and think that it's terrible, or I could choose to play it really well with a lot of fun and excitement and follow my intuition about how I'm going to play this hand, and then allow that to transform to the next hand and the next hand and the next hand. And that's just how reality functions if we allow it to. We never have to be stuck.
And I love it. You just mentioned something that we take for granted. You know what? I get worried about all the pressures that come, and you know what I mean, trying to manage. And but if we're able to realize that now is the time, you know what I mean? Now here's what's I'm faced with, and take everything you can. And that's how I use this masterclass, and pretty much everything in life. And if I can remember it at all moments, you know what, is to just take everything in. I'm soaking up what I can today from you. You know what I mean? You have a technique that can be used for my benefit. And so I'm looking to absorb the knowledge of how to use it, and then how to apply it when you're not with me, right? Because there's going to be moments out there where I'm not going to be able to, hey, Matthew, man, I'm stuck. You know what I mean? I need to come down, help me out, right? So I need to be able to manage those myself. So the idea is to absorb what I can. And that's the whole point of the class, right? So again, I love that you say life is a master class, because there's so much to learn out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's ultimately learning about ourselves. And I think, again, the idea is like, is there a tool that I can always have with me that's going to help me? And
Yes.
that can be okay, right? That can be an okay process. And a lot of us hang on to that idea because it's like a talisman. In kind of more ancient times, they'd have this, could be a pen. And as long as I have my pen, I'll feel good,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or as long as I have my lucky coin, I'll always be lucky. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because that can be a helpful process, but I call it training wheels, and I don't mean that in any demeaning way.
No,
Um,
and if I could, I'd love to put it to another way. Is that, you know what? It is a lower grade mentality. It comes from a lower grade process, because even my dog needs his safety blanket. He needs something of his mother's that he can go and grab, and he has his scent, so it makes him comfortable.
yeah,
And that's the exact same thing that you're talking about with your training wheels.
million percent, right? And again, to emphasize, if that's where you are with things in life, RJ or you watching or whoever, myself, we all have this in our own way. There's nothing wrong with that. Just understand it's part of the process, and we're going to evolve from that. And I'm in a phase now, and this is one of my main messages, is again this idea of permission slips. So like right now in this moment, a permission slip for me is like some water. So I'll take a sip of water, and then I put it down, and then I can forget about it because I don't need it now, right? So it's same with the gamma breathing is like for example, I do my regular master class every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. That's an opportunity for people to come into that master class and do the gamma breathing. But I don't insist that people now use that in their day to day, because they may come across other permission slips. So my
Hmm.
ultimate goal for people is to realize that in any moment you have what you need. So if you are feeling a moment of stress, maybe the ultimate permission slip in that moment is just to recognize that you're stressed and you don't need to be. And then from there, that can unlock an idea. Okay, well, there's gamma breathing, or maybe there's just meditating for 5 minutes, or maybe there's Wim Hof breathing, or,
Mm-hmm.
what, there's a million things you could do. Maybe I just go on YouTube and, listen to something for 5 minutes, and that'll get me in a more unique state of mind. So I really use gamma breathing as a way for people to get in touch with that higher self and realize they always have what they need, and they'll always intuitively be drawn to get what they need. And
I
so
like.
it's a complete kind of off emphasis of me and the technique. And it's just about you understanding that you're a complete person in every moment. And I think that's really magnetic for people, because I don't know how many people are sharing that type of message. It's more about their knowledge and their process and their technique or their strategy. And, you need my help in order to do this. And not everyone's operating that way, obviously, but there's a lot of that in the world. And that's why we have religion. That's why we have government, is because human nature incessantly for millennia has always looked to a higher authority other than themselves for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mission is to say, hey, we don't need to do that. Even with the gamma breathing, yes, we can do it together. We can do it in the master class. Obviously, it's recorded. You can go through the recordings and the technique, but don't feel like it's a be all end all. It may evolve into something else for you. You may develop your own breathing sequence. It doesn't
Right.
have to be this one. I mean, I use this one because it works and it seems to produce results. But if one day I decided, hey, I'm going to do a different breathing sequence, and maybe it'll be just as effective, because it's really our intention, it's our consciousness that creates it. And our breath is programmable, our DNA is programmable, our brain is programmable, but we have to allow ourselves to get in that state of mind where we feel that experience. You can't just say it, right? Because if the brain's too crystallized, if it's too solid, that's when people talk about life being hard. Well, what they mean is really their mind and their brain is so crystallized into a particular state of being, it's like concrete. So it is hard, right? But what we can do is soften that concrete up and make it like Play-Doh again. And then that's when we can start transitioning to different realities that we prefer to be in and have the experiences that are more conducive to our growth rather than us feeling like we're stuck or not good enough.
Which is a place that most people are, right? Most people are in a place where, they're going through their day-to-day lives and they never feel like they're enough. They don't feel like they're competent enough and they're capable enough. Meanwhile, again, how many things are behind us that we've done, that we've lived through, that we've accomplished, but these don't matter because now we're still not good enough.
Yeah. So let's do a breathing sequence on that. And the idea that like we don't have to be an image of our past. We don't have to be a victim of our past. And our past doesn't even have to dictate anything to do with the present. It's like a completed chapter in a book. Like obviously it helped us to get to where we are, but I've never read a book where I read one chapter, I move on to the next, and suddenly decide, you know what, I need to go back to that chapter because, like I missed something or whatever. I mean, like you move on and you go with the story and you go with the flow of the energy. And so, rather than feeling like we need to revisit our past selves, let's just be in the moment with our present selves. So we'll do a double breathing sequence here, RJ. First, we'll do the compression breath to really compress the idea that we need our past in terms of we need to carry it with us. We don't need to. And whatever's no longer relevant for us about our past, we'll compress that, kind of put it into a zip file, start somewhere on the computer where we don't need to think about it anymore. And then after that, we'll do this extraction breath. We'll look for things that are very relevant to the present moment and extract even more consciousness into them. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So go ahead and close your eyes. Again, if you're watching the recording or on the live, follow along with me and begin by breathing all the way out of your mouth and emptying your lungs. And breathe mouth in 3 seconds. And mouth out. And nose in. And nose out. And nose in. And mouth out. Nose in. Nose out. Mouth in. Nose out. Mouth in. Mouth out. Just keeping your eyes closed, breathe normal for a moment. Keeping your eyes closed, and then just notice the idea of how can we extract more in the moment, more power in the moment, more authority in the moment, knowing that everything we need is just right here, right now, and it'll guide us to the next moment and the next moment and the next moment. And now we're going to amplify that ability, that knowingness that we are fully capable of being supported in the moment, and we can trust that. And begin by breathing all the way in through your mouth, filling your lungs. And mouth out. Mouth in. Mouth out. Nose in. Nose out. Nose in. Nose out. Mouth in. Mouth out. Mouth in. Hold your breath. And let it go. Just breathe normal. Allow that energy to stabilize. And just tap into that sense of being supported, whatever that means to you in this moment. But just feel it. Just feel the support. I have what I need. I have the oxygen. I have the communication. I have the intuition. I have the imagination. I have the connection. Whatever it is. And it's all good.
Yeah, I can't say I can describe it as being any different. You know what I mean? I certainly feel a lot more comfortable,
Yeah.
whatever that means. But I mean, you know what? I'm not stressing. I'm not stressing about the time and the energy that I exuded to try and get here on time. I'm not stressing about whether I'm able to do this or whether I'm competent at it. I'm not, worried at this moment. So that's the best
Yeah.
I can say.
And that's really about transitioning into a different version of reality, because sometimes we look for like these trumpet horns from angels singing or something like that, and like,
Right.
hey, Christ has come. No, I'm just kind of joking a little bit around, but the idea is, but every moment is that rebirth, and just tuning into that. And I'm looking at the earth behind you, RJ, and there's multiple versions of earth happening all the time simultaneously. And when you turn on the news and you see what people are talking about, this coronavirus, and recently election in the United States and lockdown and all this, and those are all like realities, but they don't necessarily have to be our reality. And that's one of the key things that people get caught up in, is they think that I need to project my ideas onto others so that I can have the reality that I prefer. And it's only if others believe my version of reality that makes it real. And it's simply not true, right? And that's how human nature has functioned, again, for a long, long time. But if we say, wait a sec, my reality is just what I prefer it to be, and I can automatically align myself with others that coincide with that, that parallel that. It may not be exact the same vibration, but similar enough that we can at least have a communication. And so now you're no longer trying to project your beliefs on other people. You're just aligning with people that have similar thoughts and feelings about reality. So, for example, you started off with some stress in regards to time, and now you're in a state of being where that's no longer relevant to be inside that state. You're now more in kind of the reality here where there's more harmony, and there's more integrity, and there's more of a security. And we can continue to evolve that, and we will through the course of the class here. But the idea is that is a really significant thing, and people often devalue it because they're like, well, it didn't put more money in my bank account, or whatever. But like, well, do you feel better? Do you feel more secure? Do you feel things feel like they're going to work out? Can you respond to people from a more positive point of view? Like, those are the things that really have value. But because our conditioning is so inverted, the things that actually are valuable we diminish, and the things that are not that valuable at all we place great emphasis on, like brand names and cars and mansions and all this. So, and those things are great, but they're just a reflection of people's state, and it can either be used for positive or negative. There's lots of people with those things that are not happy people, that are not happy with themselves, have negative perspectives. They could be very selfish, very egotistical. There's also people with those things that are positive and happy, etc. So everything's a mixed bag on in the human experience, but that's powerful because we get to have the discernment to decide what works for us. And if something doesn't work for us, we don't have to fight it. We just decide, well, that's not relevant anymore, and we move on to the thing that is relevant. And how do you do that? Is through, number one, you got to acknowledge it. So that's essentially what we're doing with the breathing process. We're acknowledging, hey, time was an issue, or the idea of the past was an issue. These were issues in the past, previously, no longer issues. And then we're giving them a level of appreciation, because the only way for something to grow and evolve is to appreciate it. If you devalue it, then you're just shrinking it down. You're trying to compress it into a box where it maybe is not meant to fit. But if you appreciate it, then you can actually allow it to transform into what it needs to. So this whole process of gamma breathing is allowing us to tap into that AAA formula of acknowledge, appreciate, and allow. And it's through allowing that you can actually experience the highest quality of life, because you're no longer fighting it, you're no longer resisting it.
Sorry, I am actually just writing that down because so you said acknowledge, appreciate, and allow.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you know what? Again, I agree. We have to acknowledge a situation or something exists in order to move past it. We have to, accept it. But
yeah,
appreciating it, there's something that not many people can get to. You know what I mean? Whatever the anger or
yeah,
struggle or frustration is at the moment, they're just there. They don't go, oh, yeah, well, you know what? This could have some value in that it does this for me, right?
yeah,
You can't see that at that moment. So,
right,
and then basically allowing yourself to experience it, to go through it.
yeah,
I
exactly.
love that process. I do. And
Yeah,
again,
that appreciation is it. See, I think this is where people really get caught up in the idea of positive thinking. They feel like they're lying to themselves. They feel like they're kind of sprinkling fairy dust on like a pile of garbage, and that's not, from my standpoint, what positive thinking is. The idea that everything can serve a positive purpose is simply that when you see it from a place of integrity, when you actually see the whole picture, you see the whole map rather than just one little part of it, you realize how the whole thing's integrated and working together. So it's like a clock has all these components, and if you're looking at one component and wondering why is that component there and getting frustrated about it, you're missing all the other components that are allowing the whole thing to function. So to understand the situation that we're ever dealing with in life, no matter how arbitrary or unfair or ridiculous it may seem, it's still serving some kind of purpose. It has to be, because there's nothing random in existence. Existence is like a finely tuned clock. Every element that's in it needs to be here in order for it to function. It's not like random, right? Higher intelligence didn't create this and say, oh, I'm just going to throw some random stuff in here so that it bothers people from time to time, right? That's not how it works. Everything that's a component of existence is absolutely essential for existence to keep existing. And if one thing was missing, if that thing that caused you anger and frustration was missing, you wouldn't exist anymore, because you'd be missing that component of existence and it would collapse in and of itself because it wouldn't work. Just like if you remove that one little piece from the clock, it's not going to function, right? The clockmaker didn't throw in random parts that don't need to be there, right? That what purpose would that serve? It'd be a waste of time. Nobody does that. So, the fact that everything does serve a purpose, that's really what a positive perspective is. Now, as kind of a detective, if you will, we get to be like Sherlock Holmes of our own inner world, and we say, well, if everything does serve a positive purpose, now it's just my job to figure out what it is.
absolutely. Um and then it's a matter of letting it happen, letting it,
Yeah,
exist as it is. Yeah, as you put it, because again, we resist, we try to fight it, right? We're trying to survive. All we're thinking about is survival,
yeah.
but we're trying to fight it. We try to put up this resistance, and there's the blockage in and of itself, right? I think.
Yeah, well, it's like this is a threat. It could potentially kill me. That's what the ego thinks. So I better fight it so that, I can survive. That's basically, the ego's function, right?
Right.
But that's because we're giving the ego a role it's not assigned to have, right? Like our human experience is an ego experience. It's individual, right? We're separate in terms of the experience, but when we validate that and say that's okay, we want to celebrate our unique qualities, the fact that we're all fingers of the same hand, right? The ego experience is just saying, hey, we're not part of the same hand and we're got to fend for ourselves to survive. And the positive experience, the spiritual experiences say, yeah, we have our unique qualities, and that's what makes the earth go round. Just like all those components in the clock are different and unique, but harmoniously they work together to make an integrated system. That's what existence is. That's a fact. You can't argue with that. If we were all individuals separate from one another, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't function. And when we get into those stress states, that's when it tends to come out the most. And then we think, oh, shouldn't be dealing with this situation, but it's just not true. So if we can allow that ego to maintain the role that it's actually meant to play, which is just having the human experience, it's not capable of creating, it's not capable of conceiving, it's only capable of receiving an instruction from the higher mind, which is an intuition and inspiration. And that's the critical component with allowing. It's not like allowing yourself to be a victim, it's allowing yourself to receive that intuition, that inspiration, and then take action on it. And then from that place, you may be inspired to change things, right? It's like redecorating your house one day. It's like, you know what? I'm tired of it looking this way. I feel really inspired to rearrange things. You obviously take action on doing that, but it's not coming from a place of like, oh, it's not perfect or it's bad or it's wrong. It's just like, hey, I'm ready for a change of scenery, and this is how I'm inspired to do it.
And so then again, you have these three phases, and
Yeah.
then this gamma technique, the gamma breathing, combined with those, you kind of, because again, you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that brought you there.
Yeah.
You have to be able to change your awareness or calm yourself down. Again, anytime I've experienced struggle where we've got to come up with a solution now, I had to get into a different level of thinking. I had to be able to think in a calmer level head in order to proceed further. And I
Yeah.
think these techniques kind of bring you back to earth, so to speak.
Yeah, your real Earth, your genuine version of Earth, and rather than feeling like you got to struggle to survive and struggle to find an answer. And not to say, I think that's also a challenge. Is sometimes that works. Like sometimes that can bring you to some kind of answer. It's not necessarily the best answer, and so because that's produced some kind of result for people in the past, they kind of revert to it because you know it's relatively easy to struggle, or it's easy to get upset, or it's easy to go into that survival mode because those are conditioned responses. So, and then people are like, well, it's hard to change. Well, it's only hard to change because their brain doesn't have the neuroplasticity in it to transform. So that's why we use the gamma breathing as a main permission slip here, because it really allows that brain to soften up a bit and be like, hey, we probably don't need to keep doing those old behaviors because they're not serving us. And we can see that clearly rather than it just being an idea or concept. We actually integrate it into our brain and body.
So could this be like a form of hypnosis, self-hypnosis then? I mean, could,
Yeah.
in the sense that we are looking at the situation as it is and allowing it to enter our body, allowing it to enter our awareness, but then also changing our awareness regarding it. So it seems like a little bit
Yeah.
of a
Yeah, it
meditation.
totally is a form of self hypnosis. Like the more time you spend in that gamma frequency, the more dreamlike life becomes, and the more malleable it becomes, and the more connected to our environment we start to feel. And we realize we're actually influencing everything around us, right? Like the idea that we're creating our full reality, like that's 100% true. And it's not about like, oh, I've been a victim of reality and now I'm reclaiming charge. No, you've always been in charge. You just didn't realize it. And when it finally clicks, like, hey, I'm actually energetically, I can feel like I have some level of control over all this. And then that just continues to grow. Then you're just reawakening the fact that you really are the master of your own life class. That's why we talk about it being a master class, to the awakening that we're already masters. But, we've put ourselves to sleep through this human conditioning experience.
Excuse me. And you know what? Again, I think back to when I was first, like, again, about 8, 9 years ago, I went through some mental struggle. You know what I mean? Pretty much a nervous breakdown. And at the time, like you said, I couldn't, but like, I knew I was behaving this way, right? My wife would tell me I'm behaving this way. And I would literally say, but I don't know how to be any other way. You know what I mean? Tell me what I'm doing wrong. Show me where I'm going wrong and I'll fix it. But
Yeah.
I don't know where the problem is.
Yeah.
But if I had a little bit, and cognitive behavioral therapy was what got me through, you know what I mean? And for those who don't know, that's a simple 3-step process where you want to acknowledge the thought or action that you're taking, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Why are you having that thought? What brought it about? And then what would be a more appropriate thought or action? So those three things can help you move forward, knowing that this is the action I should take. So, but this technique as well, it just helps bring you down in the moment, which is something at that time, if you can conceive of it, if you can understand how to use this technique, it's something that could really bring you back. That again, I was lost, right? And if I could have used this technique, who knows how much easier it would have been for me to understand it to move forward.
Yeah, and I think the real key is community for people, because when we're surrounded by people that are um, allowing our past behaviors to be consistent, then it's hard to change. So just as you were in that state of like saying, well, if I knew what to do differently, I'd do it, but I don't know what to do. Like that's obviously a key breaking point where you're about to transfer into a new realm of experience. And it's also a key indicator that you're probably going to start involving yourself with different types of people that are conducive to the types of behavior you'd like to have. But that's really the fundamental key I find, RJ, is if people put themselves in an environment, energetically speaking, that allows them to grow in the way that they prefer and that they find helpful, then it accelerates the whole process. So I've really moved away from people having individual processes for themselves. I more allow people to unveil that for themselves. Like I do a lot of different things depending on the day and depending on how I'm inspired. But in the group setting, coming back, and again, we use this gamma breathing as a primary permission slip. One of the other things I often use as well is role playing, right? Because the idea of role playing is super powerful. If you think about actors preparing for a role in a movie, even before they've gotten the part, when they go for the audition, they're practicing as though they already have the part. And so, if we just embrace that same mentality for ourselves, like, yeah, maybe I'm not the multimillionaire yet, or maybe I don't have the relationship yet, but can I just be that person now? Like, how would I behave? And sure, the experience might be different, slightly different, majorly different when you're actually there. But even in your own imagination, how, thinking that you have that now, how would you respond if you had total authority of your life and nobody told you what to do, but you just simply always stood your ground? How would you behave? And the more you just enact that and role play it, literally verbalize it to yourself or to others, sometimes in a close knit community where you trust one another, it's very appropriate to express in that way. And so that prepares you for when you go out into the other, the regular world that so many people are used to. And then you can start to rearrange things with your communication, because you simply tell people, hey, you can't respond to me that way anymore because that's not, how I receive communication. And if you don't respect that, then you can't be in my life. And so you really gain a greater sense of authority in yourself when you have that ability to communicate and role play who you actually prefer to be. But community, to me, is the anchor that gives people, not in all cases, but in many cases, a great source of power and reignites the authority within themselves to be that version of who they prefer to be.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about one scenario then where you may not have much control. You're because I mean you want to be a healthy, happy person. You're working on yourself. You're doing self-improvement,
Yeah.
but then you've got a toxic coworker. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
you can't walk away from that situation. Is role playing is that something that helps there? Like
Yeah.
because
Let's
again,
let's
you can't
break it
walk away
down.
from that situation, right?
Let's break it down. I've been in the exact situation, with what you described. So I'll explain to you exactly what I did, and then how it's different for everyone in their own unique space. So the idea of working in a 9 to 5 job, first and foremost, the thing to understand from my perspective is that that's just a gradual step to eventually becoming an entrepreneur, becoming your own boss, becoming, whether it's through contracting or having your own business entirely, whatever. But working for somebody else is, and I'm not saying this in a condescending way, but it's just a step up for having a parent, essentially. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because some people, that's where they're solid. That's where they're meant to do that. There's a lot of people that are meant to do that. That's as far as they go. That's fine. But for people watching this, are obviously looking for total growth, total transformation. So first, if someone's in that situation, as I was a year and a half or so ago, um, I recognized, okay, this is a stepping stone. Like I'm not spending the rest of my life in this job or this industry or working for somebody else, because part of the spiritual evolution is to become who I'm really meant to be through self-expression. And now, a year and a half later, I'm doing this. So I knew that was a fact. So that provided a platform for me where I didn't feel trapped. First and foremost, I didn't feel trapped. Then with this person who was crazy, I'll just say, and I don't know if that's a clinical term or not, but her viewpoints of reality were completely distorted, and they were definitely contrary to mine in many ways. And when I say distorted, I'm not saying that I'm right and she's wrong. What I'm saying is there are balanced perceptions of the way things actually are in the world, and then there's imbalanced perceptions, and it's hard for those two to match and mirror one another because they generally don't align. So from my perspective, she had some very imbalanced perceptions of what was happening, not only in the workspace, but just about me as a human being. She had a lot of judgments, etc., things like that. The thing to understand too is, for people watching this, you're going to be a shining light in the dark places of the world. So if you're in a corporate setting, and thank God for coronavirus, because it's actually transforming now how we do business, we can work from home, People are now being forced to have their own businesses quicker than they may have planned. So it's a blessing in disguise. But even still, if you're finding yourself with coworkers that don't align with you, it's probably because you're upholding a higher level of positivity and integrity, and they're kind of like crabs in a bucket and want you to conform to that. So just know, again, you're like a lighthouse. They're not necessarily looking for light. They want to live in darkness. And so you're actually threatening their belief systems subconsciously. So it's another challenge. So, why am I bringing these things up, RJ, is because you have to understand what's happening behind the scenes of a conflict to begin with. Like, why is that even happening, that I'm having this disagreement with the coworkers? It's simply that our viewpoints are different. Well, that's a little too much of a simple explanation. There's a greater depth behind why it's happening. And, we don't need to go too much further with that side of it. But the fact that you are a lighthouse, shine your light, and that's threatening other people's viewpoints, that comes with the territory of spiritual growth. So you kind of just accept it. I just learned to accept that. Then, I realized, okay, I always have options. So by all rights, I could leave, I could quit and find another job. It's an option. Yes, that might
Yes.
put me under financial constraints, etc. But that would be a whole nother journey. Now, do you have to use your discernment? So I used my discernment very, very precisely. And I said, okay, well, I could leave, but it doesn't really feel like the best thing. And I had an opportunity to get another job, but that job, if I were to take it, would have had a conflict of interest with someone in my family. So I realized, okay, despite I would have been making, double what I was making, more than double, and it would have been better environment, etc. The higher realm of that was a conflict that would have produced worse results. So I said, I can't
Right.
do that. So by living through synchronicity and following the things that came up for me intuitively through my passion, through my excitement of life, living in the moment, I pursued all of them. And I was never led to a door to leave that job. It never made sense for me to leave. It made sense for me to stick it out and keep going. Now, what did make sense though, is I expressed to our team leader or whatever her role was that, hey, this is going on. I'm having this conflict. And she was receptive. Fortunately, in my case, she was receptive. It's my story. And so I actually ended up moving to a different office where I didn't have to work with that person as much. And that's just how it went. And it kind of continued. And then that eventually led to more conflicts within that workspace, with eventually the executive director, the person at the top of the organization. And when that happened, I realized I no longer had a place here, and I absolutely had to leave. And then the opportunity came where I was able to do that. I was able to get the money that I needed to start my business, and clients started coming in. So, reality gave me the stepping stones I needed to make the transition. So for someone that has a conflict with anyone in their life on a personal or professional level, just deal with it, in the way that seems most appropriate. And then also know, if you're being genuine with yourself and have that genuine discernment, life will give you the stepping stones you need to move on to the next thing. It's not luck. I didn't get lucky, right? It wasn't like, oh, Matthew, no, this is totally relatable to everyone. And that I followed my passion, I followed my excitement, I did the things that I was being honest with myself about what I needed. I wasn't lying to myself, I wasn't running away from problems. And then the right action steps revealed themselves to me, and I simply took them. And, at times it was uncomfortable in the sense that I was stepping into the unknown because I'd never done any of that before. But I also knew it was the right thing to do. So I'd say two things to kind of summarize that, RJ, is if you trust yourself, or you're developing a level of trust with yourself and that discernment, then whatever you need to do will reveal itself to you. And then as long as you're honest with yourself about what you're doing, right? Are you leaving because you're avoiding a problem? Because as they say, what's the common factor in any situation is yourself. So if you're not actually dealing with the situation, but you're trying to avoid it, well, you're just going to create it again in some other way, shape, or form. So there's no point. Deal with it now, right? This is the hand you were dealt, right? So you turn it into lemonade, right? Make it amazing. But that doesn't mean that that person's going to change. See, initially in my thought process, I still had a little bit of distorted thinking that if I'm positive enough, if I appreciate her enough, she'll change and she'll like me. I thought that for a period of time.
Mhm.
Doesn't work that way. Sometimes it does, but not really. I've
No.
very seldom found that.
Yeah, and so I love that again, you acknowledge the situation. I think that's first and foremost because you have to acknowledge that it's happening in order to get beyond it, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to, again, you say appreciate and allow. You don't have to appreciate and allow. If somebody's mistreating you or something's not in your environment to your liking, you don't have to appreciate it. And that's where we go into something I work on, where in any given situation, like you said, you have choice,
Yeah.
right? So how do you apply that choice? Well, in any situation, you have three choices that I see it. You can accept that situation as is, as if you chose it. Now, again, if you accept it, you chose it, you made that decision,
Mhm.
right? So it is what it is. I accept it. No problem, right?
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
accepting it as it is. Or if you're not cool with that, that doesn't work well with you, you can change it. You can do what you can to try and change that. You could have talked to this employee or coworker. How well would that have gone? Who knows? But you could have taken that step. You could have tried and changed it. And actually you did by going to speak to your superior, right?
Well, I spoke with a colleague too, and that didn't go over so well. So that's when I
Exactly. So you took it
definitely
to
got.
another level and
Yeah.
but you seek to find your resolve. You try to change it.
Yeah.
But there's some situations you can't change, you know what I mean, for
Yeah.
whatever reason, and then you have to make the choice to leave, you know what I mean. So those are the only three options that I see in any given situation: accept it,
Yeah.
change it, or leave it.
And that's what appreciation is. It's not appreciate like I appreciate that person because she gave me an opportunity to grow and switch up the furniture in my house, so to speak. I got to
Mhm.
change the scenery. If it weren't for her being that way, I God knows, maybe I'd still be working there. Who knows, right? So
True.
that obviously was a catalyst to my accelerated growth. So I appreciate that, right? But I think sometimes it's like appreciating her for mistreating me. No, that's not appropriate. But appreciating her for being the way she is and serving me in the way that she is for my growth, yeah, that makes sense. And then from there, now I can allow it to transform into what it needs to transform. I don't allow her to keep mistreating me. I allow the situation to transform into what it needs to be for my next evolution, my next chapter.
I'm glad you clarified because that actually even just aligned with what I was saying, except change and leave. You know what I mean? You
Exactly.
appreciate her for what she was bringing to your life.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? You allowed that to exist in order to move forward. So I get that. I totally understand and reconcile with my thinking. So,
Exactly. It is. It is. It's very holistic. And again, that's the challenge of like positive thinking is like, if I love this person enough, she'll love me. No, like, why do you even need that? Why do you need her to be different? Just like look at the whole scenario and look at all the doors that are open that you've been looking at this one door. I need this door to look this way, and it's never going to, right? But then you broaden your perspective. You're like, wait a second, there's a million other doors that are going to grant me more freedom. Why don't I just take one of those instead?
and we're so afraid of we need our existence to be conformed, right? We need this existence that we're used to, that we don't see opportunities for what they are. How many opportunities are missed because we're not paying attention? We don't need that. That's not part of our life. But meanwhile, that was where we were supposed to shift to, right? We were supposed to
Exactly.
jump into that existence because it was offered to us.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's probably a good time to note here about my workshop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is exactly what we're doing on 2 days. So this is going to be hosted every month, but the upcoming one is on January 6th and 7th, which is a Wednesday and Thursday, and it's 2 full days. It's 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a break in between the classes each day. And it's a deep dive into these belief systems about ourselves and exploring situations just like this. I mean, there's people involved in my group that are still in the job situation and dealing with that. And there's people that are making their transition into the entrepreneurial realm and they're dealing with those challenges that come up. And there's people that are established or even retired, but they're dealing with other levels of, evolving their creativity and intuition in a whole new level. So there's something for everyone, but fundamentally we'll be tapping into the idea of our inner magnetism and knowing that we're a magnet for everything that we're experiencing in our lives. We're not a victim. There's no God in the sky, some dude with a beard, or maybe a woman, hopefully not with a beard, that's like dictating, what's going on. That doesn't exist. That's not how it is. And understanding that like source power is like the electricity running through our house, and it's up to us to decide how we're going to use it, right? Like what appliances do you plug in to use that electricity in your home? What thoughts and feelings are you going to generate with this source power as a part of that evolving process, as a part of that creation process? So source power is like your partner in creating this. It's like your fuel. for creating. It's the currency of life. And so when we use it from that fashion, no longer feel like a victim and realize, hey, I'm responsible for everything that I'm experiencing. Responsibility is simply my ability to respond to what I am experiencing. And what am I going to do with it? How am I going to transform it into something that I do prefer? And ultimately realizing that I don't even need to transform things. They're going to transform on their own, and they're going to transform to be exactly what they need to be. And the ultimate state of power and balance is just realizing everything is perfect as it is. But again, that's not necessarily something you can just tell yourself. It's something you have to have the experience. So that's what we dive into during the 2 day workshop. And it's called Ignite Your Passion and Rise from the Ashes.
Ignite your passion and rise from the ashes. I like that. I like that. And so, and that's exactly what it is finding that enthusiasm, what is it ever it is you enjoy, and running with that. And again, that comes with pivoting and finding, there's that moment that I should latch onto, and there's my existence now, right? So, and I should say also that this is now the second time I've participated in your master class, and each time I pick up something of value. You know what I mean? It was different experience this time than it was the last time. So, also we were in a, mind you, we were in a group environment last time. We didn't get to do that today. It was more you and I one on one, but I think each experience is different, is what I'm trying to get at.
That's what life's all about, right? I don't believe in having like a set curriculum for life because life's evolving. It's organic. The moment you make up one plan, well, when you get into space, that plan's probably going to change at least a little bit. So I like to keep it very organic. And so the same with the workshop is it's very much based on where people are at in their lives, what they need. There's no set curriculum. There's no set system. The system, there's an inherent system in all of us. And sure, sometimes people create systems because it gives them a guidance mechanism, something they can follow. That's just never really worked for me that well. I've always relied on my own organic system, and sometimes it's different than other times. But people always get the transformation they need from my work. And it's all about them entering that new level of consciousness so that they can begin to solve their problems in more creative, fun, and exciting ways.
And I should say, you know what, in a group format, I think you're going to give everybody the opportunity to participate and get involved because you like the interactive experience. Is that right?
100%. Yeah, yeah. So I like when I think of teaching, teaching is the transfer of knowledge. And so when you're just talking all day, I don't see that as a transfer of knowledge. I don't personally learn very well that way. I'm more of a hands-on person. So typically the structure of the workshop is we start at 11 a.m. We work for about 2.5 hours. We take a break. And during that first 2.5 hours, it'll be this conversation between me and the students, and it'll be about like what are they experiencing, and we'll work through with the gamma breathing, we'll work through with the role playing. We might use some other permission slips to help people evolve. And the idea is that by the end of the first quarter of the day or the first quarter of the workshop, that then they'll be feeling like, hey, I'm feeling more empowered, I have more authority. And then we repeat that process for the second day or for the second half of the first day and then the second day. And by the end of the workshop, people feel like they have a greater level of authority in their life. They'll have a greater level of trust within themselves. They'll have a greater level of self-honesty, which is the ultimate thing, just to be honest. And then that'll help them have a deeper understanding of how they actually are creating their reality, because that's a fact. Like we're creating this whole thing, and what we put out is what we get back. But we need to understand how that's functioning because it can't just be an idea. It has to be a lived experience. So it's kind of the equivalent to like me describing to someone what green tea tastes like versus them actually tasting it themselves. That's what the workshop experience is all about.
Mhm. And so you, again, it's interactive, but I think by having other people, like you're going to be listening and participating along the way, but you're getting the value of other people's experience. Like maybe you didn't think to bring this experience forward today, you know what I mean? But you feel it, you resonate with that person that you're dealing with, whoever you're dealing with at the moment, they resonate with that person so that they can follow along and feel along with it and, embrace it in themselves. So you're getting a greater variance of experience in the one setting.
1,000,000%. Yep. That's exactly it.
So, I mean, again, you know what? There's the value in participating in the event is that, again, practice and repetitive performance. I think you'll get to understand how to embrace the process or implement these permission slips, as you call them, into your life. So, again, thank you for joining. Thank you for bringing it out. Is there anything else that you think we need to know for your master or for your 2-day workshop that?
Yeah, so you'll have a link, I believe, for
Yes, I
people
have a
to
link to
register.
it'll be through Eventbrite that they'll have to go to register, right? So,
Yep, it's through Eventbrite. Now, we just come out through the holidays, and I realize my target market is for people to have low barriers of entry. So the workshop, typically it's $250 US dollars. For people that may be having super, financial challenges or whatever, or they want to do it, but $250 is a potential barrier. Then if they enter the word scholarship at the checkout through the promo code on Eventbrite, scholarship with a capital S, they can get $100 off. So they'll basically get the 2-day workshop for $150. And how do you qualify if you need the scholarship? Well, if you're even asking yourself if you would need the scholarship, then you probably qualify. So that's obviously
so
there.
pretty much everybody's getting a scholarship, right? Because
Yeah.
why wouldn't you qualify? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, there's some people that, hey, they're doing quite well and they see the value in the $250 and they're like, you know what, I like, it's not an issue for me to pay $250.
because I
That's
mean, it
fine.
is worth more than $250 to spend those 2 days with you.
Yeah, and you know what, I've stopped kind of associating things with like what's the dollar value, because there is no dollar value
Right.
on it. I mean, you're going to transform your life. What's the value of that? But some people are going to transform personal elements, some people are going to transform business elements, and they may see a direct return on investment monetarily. I don't guarantee that. What I do guarantee is that if they're not satisfied after the first day, they can just ask for their money back. That's no issue. So it's really a no-brainer offer for people. And for anyone that has that time commitment, those 2 days, the next one in February will probably be on a weekend, but this one's a Thursday and Friday. And yeah, join me. It'll be an exceptional time.
Awesome. And I'll post the link out, whether they're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. Live, they won't have the link, but I'll post it on the recording so that people can get access to this training. Again, it's January 6th and 7th. And it is called Ignite Your Passion and
Rise from the ashes.
Rise from the Ashes. So please join Matthew for that. I'd love to do this again. You know what I mean? As you're producing, you said every month you're producing these events, so we'll hopefully get to. Can we do it every month? I'm not sure if we can fit that into a schedule. We'll talk about that moving forward. But I'm glad you were here to bring this to people today. Even if it was just you and
Yeah,
I got the experience, and even just if they're watching along, I'm sure if they participate, they can get value from that experience. So.
absolutely.
And I hope they take you up on this offer to join you at this workshop, because again, um, I found value in participating over and over again.
Mhm.
And I think that's the benefit right there, is to take it in an intensive environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate being here, RJ. It's always a pleasure for me to share my gifts, and I look forward to continuing this collaboration with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matthew. And I've ended the recording there.
Yeah.
So just I'll put out the links. I'll let
Cool,
people
bro.
know to the best of my ability that this is on January 6th and 7th. I didn't have anybody attend. I apologize. I did put it out there, and I was hoping we'd have more participants. But
Yeah, I know
again,
you're just getting started, man. So I think what you're doing with your community is quite phenomenal, and I think it's the new era. And I mean, I like for me, it's been it's gonna probably